Okay, so I'm going to talk today about action-based learning. And I guess the starting point for this is to give you an example of action-based learning. Here we've got our little girl, she's looking at the fish in the water. Wonder what happens if I actually pull that fish out of the water. Well, of course, we know that means the fish will be dead. She probably won't be too happy. Now, that will only be action-based learning if she learns from that particular mistake and the next fish she gets stays in the water and she remains happy. And it's because of that ability to learn from mistakes and correct those mistakes, which is the whole basis of action-based learning. And I guess Confucius probably said it best in the context of to be able to understand something, you usually have to actually do that particular thing. And it's with that in mind that I've been using action-based learning for a number of years now, and it's really a facilitated learning. It's a subset of problem-based learning, which is, you give the students a real-world problem which might be quite ill-structured, but you also give them the support that they need and the scaffolding that they need to be able to learn in that particular environment and answer that particular problem. And for me in sciences, and also in particular in the agricultural sciences, the ability of our students to actually take real-world problems such as they'll face in whatever career they choose within ag science and apply what they've learned and also use research skills to help solve those particular problems is the whole reason why action-based learning is an approach that I've been using. And when you think about it, even though knowledge is obviously quite important, imagination's more important in the context that, great, you can learn lots throughout your entire degree, but unless you actually know how to apply that, then it's actually not much use to you. So it's the imagination and the development of the ability to take knowledge and apply it, which is most important. So that's what unlocks the potential to be able to do things. But one of the issues that we face with a lot of our students, and this is probably not unique to ag science in particular, is that many of our students struggle with being able to join the dots between the different courses that they do at the end of the day. And so many of them don't actually join the dots until later in their undergrad, but it'd be nice to try and get them actually thinking about how to join those dots earlier in their undergrad. And so with that in mind, some of the learning outcomes that I guess I've been trying to get through a number of different courses by using an action-based learning approach is that they can critically evaluate and synthesise information, that they can ask the right question. This is actually quite important in the context of science because you're obviously needing to develop a particular hypothesis and then test that hypothesis. You obviously want them to be able to communicate effectively, so whether that's writing or oral communication. You want them to be able to manage their time. You want them to be able to find the information. And you want them to be able to discuss and debate the issues. And in my case, I've been wanting them to actually, I guess, learn that there's no right answer necessarily to any of these problems. They are ill-structured after all for a reason. So being able to debate in a learning environment is really quite important. And then obviously to be able to take the techniques and things that they've been learning throughout their degree and apply those to their particular problems. So I guess this is really all about developing research skills. So the first example I want to give is around Plant Molecular Biology 3, where what the students do is in their first, is they get given a, they get given a paper which is a particular, I guess it's from one of the higher ranking journals, and it's quite complex. I'm throwing them in the deep end, but then I have to give them the floaties to be able to get them through that particular process. They have to write a research proposal, much in the same way that we do when we write for the Australian Research Council. They then have to present that to their peers, and they also get to act as an assessor themselves because they act as referees for each other's grant proposals. And then they get the opportunity to correct and make changes to their research proposal by preparing a rejoinder as well. When I very first did this, back in 2003, and I did it for a couple of years. The students were really struggling with that first sort of idea. How the hell do I find an idea out of this and make a research proposal with it? So over the years, what I've done is I've actually combined a number of tutorials and tasks with that particular thing. So this runs over the whole semester. So, they learn how to dissect a scientific paper. We start talking about identifying questions and design, how to apply techniques. So they have tutorials with different scientists on Wake Campus around that. And we also talk in general about finding information. But this is all linked to particular tasks that they have to do, which is kind of like homework, in that it's either done online or things that are done and brought to class in face-to-face activities. One of the beautiful things about this, though, is that the students get formative assessment or formative feedback the whole way through, and it's a patchwork assessment, so each assessment builds on the other as well. So when the students first get their task in week 1, often they're really quite stressed about it. They think, I actually have no idea how to deal with this. But most of them actually have indicated how valuable that it has been in the context of learning, and they're usually quite excited. So even though they're anxious about it, they're usually excited about the opportunity to have ownership over their own learning in particular. The comment I've got down the bottom there, which is in bold, is pointed out because it does actually take a lot of time to facilitate their learning, because often different individuals are at different places in their learning, and so to be able to do it without that scaffolding is very difficult for students. So you need to provide the right type of scaffolding. So what do the students actually think whether they've actually got those learning outcomes? Well, the difference between before and after is they definitely think that they've learnt how to critically evaluate and synthesise information, that they've definitely learnt how to engage with other students and discuss and debate science, that they can dream up how to answer a particular question using scientific techniques, that they can think of our hypothesis correctly. They didn't think it did much for communication. I guess it is a third year subject, and we often do a lot of communication throughout the entire degree. It also helped them with their time management and finding information. They also felt that it helped them in terms of moving into honours year. So my question has been can we actually do this earlier and using blended learning in particular? And so for the last 3 years we've been running a course called Foundations in Plant Science, and for the first 2 years we've been running a group project where we just had a mentor who was a senior academic, and they were in groups of 4, and they had to do a research project throughout the entire semester. They developed, designed it, and did all of the experiments. One of the problems we faced, though, was that the students didn't necessarily feel comfortable in all groups talking to the different mentors. And the other thing that they weren't doing is they weren't joining the dots between what they'd learn in first year in chemistry or biology or in statistical practice. And they weren't bringing it into second year with them, or at least joining the dots. So this year what I've done is I've actually, thanks to Mario enthusing me so much last year after the Teaching and Learning Festival in relation to Storyline Articulate, is I've used Storyline Articulate to develop a whole set of different online tutorials which takes the students through some of the skills that they need to be able to do that research project. Now, we're actually evaluating this on next Monday, so I'm not sure what the results are, but I can say that the research proposal that they did, they actually included how to statistically analyse their data this year, so I think we might have done something right, at least, in terms of getting them engaged. And they've certainly engaged a lot more with their mentors this year as well, in the context of this. So I'm leaving all the information about this and any of the examples around that for the breakout session. So just to finish up, as a facilitator, one of the things I've found using action-based learning is you've actually really got to be quite flexible, because each cohort that comes through or each group of students is quite different in how they deal with the information, and therefore that means you've got to work quite hard to get the scaffolding right. It's also really useful to get your peers to evaluate what you're doing, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Beth, Carolyn and Mike, who've helped me over time. But in particular, if you're throwing them in the deep end, and even if you are giving them floaties, to be able to learn, and experiential learning actually takes a lot longer because they need to learn from their mistakes along the way. They also need to just see how other people are doing stuff. But one of the things I've found is that they always seem to appreciate and own it more than own the learning themselves, because they're doing it themselves as well.